Welcome back to After the Snap. It is me once again. It's Tasha Pierce. And yeah, this is the one we've kind of been waiting on, ain't it? I've been wanting to talk about it for a few days here, but I was giving everybody an opportunity to get caught up, especially since this one kind of dropped on us by surprise during San Diego Comic Con. So, hey there, Miss Powell. Goodness gracious, it's been a little while since I seen you, girl. Glad to see you. And shut up, Wesley. Yeah, but I've been wanting to talk about this one since the day that I watched it because it's like, there were expectations for the Lower Decks crossover with Star Trek Strange New Worlds, but I don't think that I expected that. Don't think I expected that. We're going to get into that, but of course, we're going to jump this whole thing off with what we've got as far as news in the Star Trek universe. So, yeah, girls, been since Picard season 3. So, I'm getting caught up because you might have missed the fact that I had gotten sick in the middle here of this season. And I had the flu, girl, and it tore me up. So I'm really just getting myself back on track. So I'm really glad to have you in the place. It's nice seeing people return to the fold, and I also appreciate your patronage. So thank you very much for that as well. Um, but yeah, we got some news, and surprise, surprise, most of the news is coming from the animated universe, and that should come as no surprise because this is our animated celebration for Star Trek. So let's just start getting into where we are as far as news is concerned. And of course, it's going to start with Lower Decks. So during the Star Trek animated celebration panel at Comic Con, it was announced that Star Trek Lower Decks is headed to the big screen on Star Trek Day, which is Friday, September 8th. The screenings will be held domestically and internationally. And according to John Van Critters, the vice president of Star Trek brand development, more details on their plans for Star Trek Day will be coming soon. So it's become kind of a tradition that we have an event, some type of event for Star Trek Day. I hope that is going to continue this year, that's not going to change. Let's cut some light up here. That's not going to change this year. We haven't heard a lot about the plans, but it's nice to know that they do have plans. But if you wanted to catch Star Trek Lower Decks, the first 2 episodes on the big screen, then Friday, September 8th is going to be your chance. They did something similar. Hey, Justin. They did something similar with Star Trek Picard. There were select theaters throughout the United States that had big screen viewings. I think, Miss Powell, I think you were able to go to that, if I remember correctly. You were able to go to Picard season 3 one. Here we are now. Hopefully, they're opening this up to a few more screenings, but I haven't seen where the screenings are going to occur for Star Trek Day. So let me know if that's something that you guys think you guys going to be interested in the comments. Picard said, Picard said, Wingrave said, yeah, Picard didn't do anything within hundreds of miles of him. So, yeah, you had to live in one of those major cities. And I live in a major city. I stay in the Houston area. I stay in Houston proper. And they didn't do anything here. So there's that. Now, Miss Powell said, yes, it was so great. So she was able to see those first 2 episodes of Star Trek Picard season 3 on the big screen. And people are going to get an opportunity to do the same thing with Star Trek Lower Decks. Now, for us, the rest of us, we will get the first 2 episodes on September 7th, which is the typical drop date for our Star Trek episodes, which is that Thursday. It'll be available probably early in the morning as usual, but we will also get 2 episodes. So we won't be left behind. Thank you, Justin, for that $2 super sticker. I really appreciate it. Makes me happy. It makes my heart sing when you guys appreciate my work. Ms. Powell said they could do that with every Star Trek premiere, like Doctor Who used to do for their season premieres. That makes an awful lot of sense. And then, given the cinematic quality of Star Trek Discovery, I think that will play really, really good on the big screen. Y'all tell me if you plan to take advantage of seeing Lower Decks on the big screen. I wonder how that is going to come across for viewers. Okay, then we move on. More Lower Decks news. If I can get my slides to change slide. There you go. IDW Publishing, the Star Trek's comics, they had a panel on the San Diego Comic-Con, and they announced a new project titled Lower Decks Warp Your Own Way. It's a 200-page choose your own adventure graphic novel. It's written by Ryan North, who also wrote the Lower Decks comic miniseries, and it is going to have art provided by Chris Fangolo. I don't know. Forgive me, Chris, because I think I butchered your last name, but my heart is in the right place. So if you are looking for comics, this were graphic novels, this will be the thing for you. And I know a lot of my audience does dabble in the comic books, graphic novel side of things. I haven't got so much into it, but I thought I would share that piece of information because you guys are into it. Don't matter whether I'm interested. Wingray says, I wonder if they'll do a Strange New World double feature of the Lower Decks crossover and the musical at some point, or even just give us the musical. Just give us the musical on the big screen. Again, I'm still trying to feel my way around this musical thing, but I'm gonna give it a chance. That I will do. But I think that might be a good idea, Grace, if they put these two very special episodes together. That would be a good idea. Thank you, Justin. Thank you so much. I am so serious. Grace also says the Lower Decks comics were even stranger than the show. I can only imagine. My throat is starting to itch. So I was doing so good with the other live stream, and now my throat is doing its thing. So let me take a swallow of this water so I won't start coughing. I thought we were getting past this, and I should have made tea. But here we are. Another piece of information coming from the animated side of things. They got these action figures. So Artisan Figure Maker X06 is partnering with Mondo and Funko on a new series of Lower Decks maquette statues shown at Comic-Con for the first time. Now there's 3 planned statues: Mariner, Boimler, and Badgie, which continues to confirm to me that Badgie is going to play some part in this season, but also because Badgie was just a hell of a fun character. I enjoyed Badgie and what he brought to the episode that Chris coming down the pipe. So the 3 planned statues made no pricing was available. Gray says he wants Tindy. I haven't seen they right now they've only announced these 3, but I'm pretty sure we'll be able to get Rutherford and Tindy at some point too, right? At least those 2. You would hope that we would get the entire lineup of officers that are heavily featured in Lower Decks. But we'll have to wait and see. Right now, we know that we're getting Mariner, we're getting Boimler, and we're getting Badgie, and also like I said, those Badgie Christmas ornaments that will be coming as well. Let's see. Justice says, always like the comments and comics and graphic novels and books. Also, I'm ready for Patrick Stewart's book when that comes out. And that should be soon, isn't it? I don't I know I talked about it in a previous episode, but I can't remember the date. Can't remember the date. Speaking of some more animated news, and this kind of struck me as good news. Now, like I've been saying, I'm going to continue to talk about Star Trek Prodigy until at least we know where it lands. But the same exec, what was his name? John, Lord have mercy. I wrote it down because I knew I was going to forget. I wrote it down and now I lost John Van Critters. So the same exec, John Van Critters, had this to say about Star Trek Prodigy, among other things. Now, he said more about it. And if you like, I can read a little bit more of the article that I got this out of. BT Dubs, most of these articles were pulled straight from trekmovie.com because I love their content. But anywho, that John Van Critters said, I personally love Star Trek Prodigy, having known what the Hagemans and everyone have been working on for years. This won't be the end of Dow, Gwen, Rock Talk, Zero, and especially Murph. As you know, he's indestructible. They're still part of Star Trek. They're part of canon. They always will be. Star Trek and its fans are always full of surprises. This is a universe that is filled with hope and possibility, and the crew members of the Protostar are absolutely perfect examples of that. This will not be the end of that crew. And that last sentence just kind of made me breathe a sigh of relief. Not that I can take anything that a studio exec says at face value, but it sounds as if he knows something that we don't. And because he's an exec, I'm going to say that that's more than likely very possible that he knows something we don't, and that we will get some good news about Star Trek Prodigy. Because this, to me, again, and I say it every week since this announcement was made, that was a bad move on behalf of Star Trek uh, or Paramount Plus. And I say it and I mean it. I hope it comes back to bite them in the ass. Wingray says, I mean, I really want Playmates to make some of the new shows to pair with my classic Trek figures. That would be nice because you got a little collection going, huh? So, yeah, that would be nice. Now, Ms. Powell says from Armin Shimmerman's Quark's tweet, Michelle Hurd, as a member of the SAG-AFTRA negotiating committee, helped carve out a dispensation for actors to attend sci-fi conventions as long as certain conditions are met. So they are still looking out for the fans. Now, Van Critters is with CBS Studios, who makes the shows, versus the Paramount Plus execs, if you remember correctly. So let me see, make sure that we're getting that right. Um, they had his title in the doggone article, and I just took the part of the article that I wanted to share. I am bringing up the article. So yes, he is he's Paramount's vice president of Star Trek brand development. So that is the entire job description for John Van, and I'll keep calling him Van Critters, and his last name is Sitters. Oh gosh. So John Van Sitters is the Paramount Vice President of Star Trek brand development. So if hopefully if somebody was to have some inside information, that that is the person who would have it, and they're giving us no false hope for Star Trek Prodigy. October 3rd is the date for Patrick Stewart's book. I'm really looking forward to Patrick Stewart's book too, but I don't know how often I mention I love Patrick Stewart. I just love him. I love him to death. Another, since I got the article open, I guess I can read another one of the quotes from John Van Sitters at San Diego Comic Con. He said, "First and foremost, I don't think we can have a panel celebrating Star Trek animation without addressing kind of the 800-pound rock talk in the room," which was something that we were all concerned about. It seems like they had been trying to distance themselves from Star Trek Prodigy in a way. Well, fortunately, he brought it up, and he brought it up kind of early in their conversation, in their panel celebrating Star Trek animation. He said, "We all know that Prodigy is not currently available on Paramount Plus, but this isn't the end of the story for Prodigy. Season 2 is still in production. The creative team is working hard to finish what is a great storyline, and we're working to find Prodigy a new home." So I'm, wherever it lands, I'm in there like swimwear. I just wish that we would be able to watch all of Star Trek in one place. Let's see. Okay, that was that one. And then Justice says, "I'm thinking there will be Prodigy movies like DC does with their animated universe." Well, that would be one way of keeping the brand alive, keeping that series alive. And then, they also, I guess that's my next slide, though. I'll hold off. I won't say anything about it just yet. So Mrs. Powell says that John Van Sitters is on Twitter a lot. He handles Star Trek merchandise, among other things for Star Trek. And she's also agreeing that she should get some Prodigy comics. We got good news on that front. Um, so Justice says, if they did that and they're good as DC is with that, there is a bright future. Again, any way we can get Star Trek Prodigy and get it where it is still part of the Star Trek family. It's not like some black sheep living off in a distant universe by itself. Any way that we can get it, I'm here for it. And one of those ways is going to be in a comic. We're getting a Star Trek Prodigy comic. It was actually a novel. The middle grade novel is written by Cassandra Rose Clark and is titled Escape Route. And then they provided a synopsis. The crew is on their way to Starfleet. Their shuttle is cramped and everyone is cranky. That's when Murph spots a moon that isn't on their charts. Murph really wants to go there, so the crew decides to make a stop to stretch their legs and get some supplies. But a small detour turns into a big dilemma when the inhabitants of the moon ask Murph to stay with them. The rest of the crew begins to wonder if this is a sign. Could it be time for each of them to go their separate ways? So, Escape Route is our Star Trek Prodigy graphic novel. It's a little bit, like they said, it's middle-aged, middle grade level. So it is probably not for the younger kids, but I can see myself probably getting this book for it to be something that I share with my grandchildren before they're able to pick the book up themselves and read it. So let me know how you guys are feeling about the Star Trek Prodigy graphic novel called Escape Route. Also, this is coming August 1st, so it will be available for your purchase on August 1st. Um, Justice says, yes, I agree. Prodigy comics will be good too. So he's agreeing, Miss Powell. And I think both of you guys were pretty on the nose as something that, as Star Trek fans, you're saying you're interested in. We're getting a little bit of that. And I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully, it's something that, again, keeps Prodigy alive in the minds of the fans, because it was starting to look like they had no intention of ever mentioning Prodigy again. But it just gave me a little bit of hope for the series when we saw Van Sitters and then these plans for the graphic novels. So now we're moving through the news pretty quickly. We've got a Beyond the Holodeck question, and this one is kind of long, y'all. And I had to do it because I had to use this particular post from a Star Trek group I'm in on Facebook, because I think I take for granted, and I don't know if anybody else, I take for granted that I am the average Star Trek fan, and that I think that most of what we've seen in Trek has been not, maybe not simple, but easy to follow along. That I am picking up what they're putting down most of the time. There are some times where another fan will get an understanding of a certain scene or situation that I didn't get, and I'll think to myself, oh, I didn't see it like that, but yeah, I can see how you would say that. So I feel like, and a lot of times that we're average fans, but then I see a question like the one that I'm about to share with you, and it is making me realize that some of the concepts that are being introduced are completely over the heads of some of the audience. And I'm wondering, so my big question for Beyond the Holodeck is, uh, is things getting too complex? Do we need to make things a little more simple? We talked about it the other day, very briefly, in our chat from the day before yesterday, how the attention span of the average fan is starting to become less and less. And this, to me, maybe not that their attention span is low, but they're just not gathering what was presented. So with no further ado, let me just present to you the issue. Okay, so this person had asked a question, but now they're trying to reiterate their question. So they said, let me try to ask this a different way. On DS9, in the original timeline, we first see Gabriel Bell. Then by the end of the episode, the prime timeline has changed, and a new person is Gabriel Bell, who looks suspiciously like Ben Sisko. So we know the prime timeline has changed. And I'm like, I don't think the prime timeline changed. But let's go on with their question. Then in this very season, in Tomorrow, the Romulan agent says, yeah, so many people have tried to influence these events, to delay them or stop them. I mean, whole temporal wars have been fought over them. And it's almost as if time itself is pushing back and events reinsert themselves. And all this was supposed to happen back in 1992. And I've been trapped here for 30 years trying to get my shot at him, talking about Khan. I'm not going to stop now. So this person reiterates. So again, we know the timeline has definitely changed. The timeline, as far as the way that it's been explained within Star Trek, was that the timeline did change, but historically the events were miscalculated anyway, and that's because it had to make room for these things to change because of the temporal wars and all of that. I wish my phone would shut up. I promise you, been sitting here all day and this phone ain't been beeping. So anywho, um, so here is their big question. Given that we know the timeline has definitely changed, is it possible that the characters look different, not just because they are necessarily played by different actors, but because in the altered timeline, their parents essentially took a different role of the genetic lottery. And this is where I'm like, oh man, you might be overthinking this a little bit, to this person who's asking the question, or let me know if I'm not thinking enough about it, if I'm not seeing exactly what this person means. I feel like they're making this a lot harder than it has to be. This person also goes on to say, so what I'm basically suggesting is that this is kind of like the old versus new Klingons. When the new Klingons first appeared, it was kind of a weird change, and there were many people who tried to explain the change with creative license. Well, maybe the Klingons looked that way all along. Maybe the old Klingons looked different because they were filtered through Kirk's memory or something. But eventually, in the DS9 episode Trials and Tribulations, it was made clear that the Klingons really did look different, and then it was explained in Enterprise. So basically, what if New Trek really are genetically different people from their old Trek namesakes? But the lesson here is that nature gets its behind kicked by nurture. So things happen on similar trajectories. So sorry, guys, for the coughing. Wingray says Star Trek should have a little intellectual challenge. That's always been part of the specialness of Star Trek. And Miss Powell said, I'm not sure that we do know that the timeline changed or just misremembered with World War III poor dating. And that's the way, I think that's the way I'm looking at it. Now we know that there was a place, a point in time that could have gone one way or another, because we did see that in Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. But our timeline, the timeline that we are viewing week by week, is the path that La'an was on, and that's the way in our timeline things were, quote unquote, supposed to happen. So this, and I get what you're saying too, when Grace, that there should be a little complexity to it, but when we have fans who seem to be this far off to the point where they're making the statement that, um, basically, what if New Trek really are genetically different people from their old Trek namesakes? This is them once again trying to make this an entirely different timeline. This is an alternate universe, like the Kelvin timeline, and that's not what we have right now. What we have is a continuation, or maybe some a prequel to what we have seen in other iterations of Trek. But it seems like the concepts are so complex that a lot of fans are not getting it, because I don't get that this person hates New Trek. I get that they completely are not understanding what what has been laid out in front of them week to week. And if I would have gone through the comments and pulled some of the comments that are supporting this person's assumption, you'd be shocked. I was shocked. I was like, I honestly thought this was pretty cut and dried. I thought people understood what was happening. And I know time travel can get a little wonky, but, and I guess if you are a fan of enough time travel stuff, that it becomes less wonky because we can rectify it in our mind versus what we've seen in Doctor Who and the Marvel universe and other sci-fi and fantasy franchises. So yeah, I'm just very confused. I was just very confused. Yeah. Oh, Wingray said, I said that before seeing the question. The question would throw you all the way off. Now, once this question started getting asked, it's like, yeah, they're not understanding. um, Ms. Powell says, production folks have always retconned things, always. Klingons changed in Star Trek the motion pictures, but they were still the Klingons with Kang, Kodos, and Kor and DS9. They are the same Klingons as in TOS, the exact same ones. It's just, as you put it, it's just a retcon. And Klingons, they tried to explain how things went in Enterprise, and I was like, okay, I can accept that, but it's still seeming like people are not understanding that both Klingons are Klingons. As a matter of fact, even the Klingons that we saw in Discovery, I'm pretty sure that there will be some explanation about why those Klingons look the way that they looked. I think that they are still thinking that these are three separate timelines because of the way these characters look. But if we can understand that Pike is still Pike, he is not a different Pike because he looks different than Jeffrey Hunter. He's still Pike. If we could get our minds around that concept, I thought that we'd be able to get our minds around the rest of this stuff. But it still seems like people are struggling with that. Wingray says we have an alerted universe, but as they've said, it's happened before. The Bell riots and yesterday's Enterprise both subtly altered the timeline. Right. So when in history uh before Cisco went back in the Bell riots, and I guess I chose this, like I said, because the Bell riots were mentioned in the episode those scientists, but because he went back in time and then he ended up having to stand in the place of the original Gabriel Bell, his picture ended up being what you would see in history books. But as far as history was concerned, that was still Gabriel Bell. That was still the same person. I don't know. I don't know if I know it's making sense, but I don't know if this would make sense to the person who was posing this question and or to the people who were agreeing with him or them. Justice says that's a good question, but I think it's a little overthinking it. I just hope it doesn't turn into Terminator, how their timeline was, right? And not Kodos, Koloth. I know what you mean. Oh gosh. So yeah, there is a new link in the description if you want to join the Discord. The link is no longer busted. I put it in the description of our live stream, so it should be there. Um, so yeah, that is our Beyond the Holodeck. And you guys can continue to discuss it if you got anything else you wanted to add. But as for us, we're about to enter into our main event, which is Those Old Scientists, Strange New Worlds, Season 2, Episode 7. In this one, an accident while investigating a time portal sends Ensign Brad Boimler through time from the 24th century, and Captain Pike and his crew must get him back where he belongs before he can somehow alter the timeline. This one is written by Kathryn Lynn and Bill Wolkoff, directed by our boy, Jonathan Frakes, and it has two star dates, 2291.6 and 58460.1. So, um, we got finally the episode that we've been kind of waiting on has been this episode, Those Old Scientists, and it didn't disappoint. I don't know what I completely expected. I expected it to be fun, and I expected it to be I expected to see more of the lower decks energy crossover into Strange New Worlds. And you know what? We got that, but we also got we got a beautiful marriage of both styles of storytelling. And we also got to wrap our minds a little bit more around what makes Boimler tick, what makes Mariner tick. So even though this was something that where the people from lower decks crossed over into the Strange New Worlds universe, we still saw development in the characters from lower decks. I thought it was just so very, very well done. Now, there's a lot that we could just sit here and talk about uh, beat by beat of the episode, but you guys know we had this conversation last night on Clarence's channel. So if you guys are not hanging out on discussing Trek, it's like that's my spiritual brother live stream. And we did well, I listened to them talk it out. And they hit a lot of the points that any of us talking head types are going to hit. And let's pick up Miss Powell before I go too far. It was better than I expected. The chapel stuff was heartbreaking, and Una and Pike was affirming. Yes, and I liked the care that Boimler, because we're used to seeing them kind of fly by the seat of their pants over on lower decks. But even though he made a few mistakes, Boimler was taking care to make sure that he did not ruin the timeline. And when he thought that he had somehow messed up the timeline and messed up Spock, he genuinely looked like he was disappointed in himself, because he knows how much the fate of that galaxy lies in the hands of Spock, and what Spock does as far as uh, how he moves going forward in his story. So it was way better than I thought it would be. It was way better than I expected, just like Miss Powell said. Those old scientists is a reference to that lower decks episode called No Small Parts, when they said TOS meant those old scientists. And of course, we know that San Diego Comic-Con is the reason why we got this episode early. Now, one of the other things, and I didn't pick up a lot, or I didn't pick up any screenshots, I don't think. Maybe I did. We'll see. Did I pick up screenshots from when the opening credits and how they were redone with the lower deck style? And it also included two things that I thought was hilarious. Number one was that creature that sucks all on the Cerritos in the lower deck intro. That creature had attached itself to the Enterprise. And the second thing that I just thought was hilarious was that damn koala. When that koala showed up, uh, and it was we're still talking about this same koala who was part of the, what was the name of that episode? Moist? I can't remember. Um, Gosh, I can't remember the name of the episode, but that episode had the koala that was like this metaphysical being, and we saw the koala here as well. That koala is a running joke, and I'm loving it. Um, the episode begins with Boimler's star date. That's where we got our original star date, 58460.1. This sets this episode, moist vessels. Thank you, Miss Powell. It sure was. It was moist vessels. And look, the only reason I can remember moist is because sometimes I hate that word. It bothers me. So that word remembered me. That word remembered me. That word stood out to me. So the star date 58460.1 is right in between episodes 5 and 6 of Lower Deck season 3. So later, when Boimler is going through and talking about the star date, he just says the past, because he can't remember that the actual star date is 229 1.6. And like he said, 5 digits, a totally normal date to be living here. Oh gosh. Hey Norman. Norman says Shax should have mentioned the koala instead of a mountain. Just my opinion. And look, I don't even remember the freaking mountain comment. Uh, Now, there were other things that I wanted to talk about. Oh, a simple one, and I even have the picture. The way that he got sucked into that to that portal looked just like when Beverly Crusher got sucked into another universe. In that, what episode was it? I know I got it written down. So pardon me while I find it in my notes. Oh gosh. I know I got it written down. I will. I do. Remember me, Miss Powell and Norman. Thank you. You guys are knocking it out the park with keeping me on my toes here. So yeah, that was it. Remember me. Um, she's the only person who kind of remembers that she's on the Enterprise. This is a starship, and there's supposed to be other people, and she gets down to where she is the last person standing, and she gets pulled into this freaking vortex. Anyway, yes. Yes, Wesley's warp bubble experiment. Shut up, Wesley. So let's see what else we have here. Um, the visuals. Now, I think this is one of the scenes that Clarence was talking about. You know how they talk about the wall, or that AR wall that they are starting to use instead of going on location or having the CGI uh, screens and stuff. They have that wall that they are using now. And I think this is an example of what Clarence was talking about, how the wall is starting to look, we're starting to be able to tell that they're using it. And while it's not taking me out of the episodes, yeah, when I stop or watch the episode more than once, it is obvious. Yes, Justin, that was a good episode. It was. Uh, and thank you for reminding people to hit the like button, thumbs up. I appreciate that, Norman. Let's see. Another, there are so many of these where, number one, you still get the lower decks actors making all of these references to old stuff that happened in Star Trek, but it wasn't overdone. When he yelled Riker as he got on the saddle, which would mean absolutely nothing in the time that they're living in right now, but to number one, it would mean something to Jonathan Frakes, who was behind the camera on this. So I'm pretty sure he found that pretty funny. And then number two, of course he would say Riker, because this is who he is. This is what they do. All they do is reference stuff from other Star Trek. And you know what? I think I'm going to be less condescending about them doing it, especially the way it was presented in this episode, as it all is coming from a place of love. Uh I enjoyed Mariner and Boimler far more than I thought I would. I keep saying that. Um Miss Powell said, I find that Strange New Worlds is choosing to have the AR wall look like the matte paintings from TOS. I'm getting that. I get that vibe. Look at the Rigel 7 episode versus the Menagerie episode in TOS. And I'm going to have to make that comparison. But now that you said it, I can see that. I really can. So it is an intentional choice that the wall looks like scenery from TOS. And that makes sense to me. Yeah. So we got that. We also learned, well, we knew this part, I guess. It was easy to figure out that Boimler, not only is he just a fanboy of this era, but he is a huge Spock and huge Pike fanboy. He knows a lot of minutia about those characters. I mean, I guess everybody on the Enterprise, and I guess that would be the ship that you would look to and be like, these are the, and if you're on the Enterprise, we're going to know who you are, and you guys will end up being history's heroes for this newer generation. I'm gonna drink a little water because I feel the tickle in my throat again. The cough is always the last to go. Um, So yeah, Justice says it doesn't take him out of the episode either. It does remind him of TOS and TNG. And I definitely, the more, or of course, like I said, the more I see the wall, the more the wall is apparent. But I also, now that Miss Powell said that, I can't unsee it the way that she just explained. And it does make an awful lot of sense. It is another way of paying honor to what came before. We are beyond using a matte backdrops, but it's still, we can still have something similar in this day and age. And I'm cool with that. Miss Powell says Captain Pike's castle in the cage menagerie versus in Strange New World. They had a segment of Ready Room for that episode about the AR wall and Rigel 7. And I tell you, I need to get back into watching the Ready Room because I've fallen off the whack. And I was watching it for every episode of Picard. And I guess I was watching it so much for Picard because everything kind of ties together in Picard. But with Strange New Worlds, many of these episodes, in fact, all of the episodes stand alone until you get to a certain point where there's that little thread that is underlying that ties everything together. Hey there, Geek Filter. I was just thinking about you the other day when we were talking about TAS, those 5 episodes that are going to be coming out that are in the style of the animated series. And I thought about you because of your handbook. So Geek Filter says, I think using the AR wall was very smart. It's a good bridge between animation and live action since it seems a bit fake. And that's another way to look at it. It is the marrying of these two different styles of storytelling inside this one episode. So yeah, it was just a lot that I loved about what went on there. So what else? What else? What else? Oh, Boimler was so excited about this doggone tricorder. He said it was a classic TS 120, and Bango was like, it's really a 122. And Boimler said, no, they never improved on this classic design. But the 24th century tricorders were arguably less likely to explode. And then you see over here the picture of when the Gorn sabotaged that tricorder and it exploded on Spock. So that was just like one of the uh, obscure kind of references that we got in this episode. You've been doing some of the TAS 50th stuff. Is that the big project that you've been working on that you kind of hinted at the other day? Or not the other day. It's been a little while since you hinted at it. Because I've been thinking about that too. Like, I'm wondering what he's working on. I wonder when he's going to be able to talk about it. So yeah, that's interesting too. That this is the 50th, like, gosh, shit is same age as me. Wow. So what else? What else? What else? Oh, and then we got to the time travel riot where they name dropped this riot without name dropping it. And I liked how Una said those references are weirdly specific. Like, you got to be talking about something that actually happened, because she said she was worried, because Mariner said that she was worried about Boimler traveling back in time, that they could have found him stuck in a dystopian San Francisco future in the middle of a riot. And that, of course, is that DS9 time travel episode that we already kind of partially, little bit discussed in our Beyond the Holodeck stuff. So Geek Filter said, yes, that is kind of what he's working on. Not the shorts, but some other stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing what you have got for us, because I thought about it. I was like, I wonder what it is he's working on. Oh, it does, doesn't it, Justin? Justin says that shot reminds me of Ghostbusters. You caught me off guard. It surely does. It does look like all they missing is the proto packs. Oh gosh. But yeah, so that look, and I really, some of the stuff that I find a little overbearing in Star Trek Lower Decks hits just right in the Strange New Worlds crossover. And it is also going to make me look at Lower Decks a little differently. This is going to probably make me a Lower Decks fan. It's so hard. Lower Decks fan. It's so hard to say that. But I like I said, it's been growing on me season by season. But this episode alone of this crossover has done so much to make me appreciate these characters and the actors who bring those characters to life. I've got a new appreciation for uh, the style of humor that we got in Lower Decks. A Geek Filter says, totally looks like Ghostbusters. I will never look at that scene the same way again. Yes, it is. It, once you see it that way, you can't unsee it. It does look like a scene straight out of Ghostbusters. Ms. Powell says the Bell riots get mentioned a lot. Picard season 2 also referenced them obliquely with sanctuary cities. I thought they should have expounded more on sanctuary cities and the Bell riots in Picard season 2. I thought they should have hit on that just a little bit more. Missed opportunity, if you ask me. But yes, they do come back to the Bell riots. And we do know that that is kind of a pivotal period in the forming of, or in the progression of Earth during the time period. So anyway, that's 21st century San Francisco. They right here in our time period. And my goodness, we are seeing that this is actually a possibility. Now, I know this is not what this stream is about, but I have been seeing where certain cities, and I can't remember which ones, and that's why I should not have brought this up, because I don't have it memorized, where they have these kind of like mini trailers. They almost look like a one room trailer. And they're talking about using that so that houseless people will have places to stay. And the concern of many people is that they will put these trailers in an area where you can just forget that these houseless people even exist, and have these kind of like cattle. You know how when I was in the military, so when we were in the field, the way the showers and the such were. Now, we would have to dig a foxhole in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, whatever. But to use the facilities, the actual facilities, it looked like a place where you would just look like stables. And that's where we would shower, and you would, get to actually use a functioning toilet. But um, that's what people are afraid of, that they're going to put the houseless people there and just forget that they're there, and they will become these kind of sanctuary cities that people are, part of me says that it's a great idea because nobody would have to sleep on a cold bench in a park somewhere. But then there's also the ability to abuse it. But anywho, let's see. I'm going to go back and grab. Um, Geek Filter says, living in LA, sadly, it feels like sanctuary districts are right around the corner. And I don't think it was LA, but it was a city. I believe it was Portland. So we shall see. Miss Powell says it's next year. The Bell riots. The Bell riots would be in the timeline will be next year. Now, Justice says in Picard, it was 2 years before the riots, I believe. Yeah, I thought they would have tied it in a bit more. Now, Norman is saying Picard season 2 was in 2024, but earlier the year of the Bell riots. It was LA for the city that I'm thinking about with these proposed sanctuary districts. If that's it, yeah, that's kind of scary. We don't want that to be LA. I really hope that it was Portland. And Norman said San Francisco was where the Bell riots took place. So yeah, I think she was talking about where they're proposing this sanctuary district uh, in real life. Then we got Boimler when he finally made it to the bridge, and he's like, the bridge of the Enterprise 1701 dash nothing. And they're like, what would come after the dash? Well, that is the Enterprise that Scotty wanted to go back to when he was on the Enterprise, and he decided that he wanted to see things the way they used to be, the way he remembered them on the bridge of the Enterprise. Sorry. Justin said, you're correct, Norman. Just looked it up. Um, the earlier the year of the Bell riots. So Picard season 2 was in that same year. Okay. Let me take a sip here. So yeah, it was nice. Number one, first, and before I go any further, because I didn't mention it, they did a splendid job with these uniforms, this lower deck uniform, bringing it to life, and also staying true to the way Mariner not only wears her uniform, but the way that she kind of behaves, the way she moves. Th- those things, they paid an awful lot of attention to detail, and they got it right. And I really love the uniforms. I really do. Let's see. Let's see. I guess I'm going to put that reminder up there. I want you guys to remember to come back on Sunday, because we're going to hopefully, we're going to get back on track and stay on track for a little while with our streams being on Sunday. Um, I got now, and while I'm thinking about it, um, I've got a baby shower for my, wait a minute, my grandson's first birthday is coming. That's August 4th. So that's a Friday. I'm pretty sure that I'll still be able to get a stream on that Sunday. And then we have a baby shower too. Damn, that's all the same week. I might not be able to do a stream that Sunday. It might have to change because they're doing a baby shower for the next baby at the same time we're doing the first birthday for my original Don Dada grandson. So I will keep you posted on when things are happening as far as that live stream stuff goes. Um, so Picard season 2 was set in April 2024. Bell riots were that September. So there we have it. And I really think it was a missed opportunity to not put us in a sanctuary district where we could have seen some of how things went. Uh, I guess they were looking at it like maybe that's just a little too on the nose. That's the world we're living in almost right now. So okay. um, and as always, and he didn't need this by BT Dubs. Pike kind of got a little bit of a pep talk from Boimler, kind of setting history on the course that it needed to go on with the Orions, but also telling, giving these affirmations to Pike about who he is to the future of Starfleet, what they know about Pike are the strong qualities and the embodiment of a good captain. And it just in case Pike had any question of where he stood or where he would stand in the future of Starfleet, he got just a little bit of confirmation that what he's doing is not only appreciated, it's celebrated, and that was good to see. Um, Now, this meant so much to me, and we touched on it a bit in Clarence's live stream yesterday. But Uhura meeting Mariner, or the other way around, Mariner meeting Uhura, and finding out that you put people up on a lofty pedestal, but somehow they have to get on that pedestal. And she is meeting a Uhura who is not quite yet the hero that she had built up in her mind, but Mariner knows she's going to get there. And Mariner knows that she is someone to look up to. But taking it into the real world, a character like Tawny Newsome would owe a debt of gratitude to the actress who played Uhura originally, which was Nichelle Nichols. So this is kind of almost a little bit of a meta moment where you're meeting your hero. You're face to face. This is time to say thank you, because without you being on that bridge, we might not be on that bridge. You know what I mean? uh, Geek Filter said, I'm just 22. I haven't done hardly anything to admire, or something to that effect. And baby, yes, but you just don't know that what you become is now, some of it is revisionist history, because even though we know that just Nichelle Nichols just being there meant so much in the era, but they could have given her more to do, and they could have given the other women more to do as well. But okay, we can forget that they didn't get an awful lot to do in the original series. They more than made up for it as time moved on. But we know, as women of color, as a person of color, we know how important it was for Nichelle Nichols to be on that bridge, to the point where the man himself is giving you a phone call saying you got to stay on that bridge. You cannot leave. This was a moment that had to happen. And Ms. Powell said articles stated that Tawny Newsome insisted on Mariner being with Uhura, because that would be something. And it was very smart of her to make that, to insist upon that point, because that was something that definitely uh, would have had to happen. It had to happen. If it didn't happen, that would have been largely miscalculated on behalf of the writers and or the directors, all of that. Geek Filter says she actually had more to do in a cartoon. One of the reasons that he loves TAS, and somebody brought that up in my last stream. No, it was Wind Grace, that Una and not Una, Chapel and Uhura got far more to do in TAS, which goes on to further solidifies the fact that I need to get caught up on TAS. But but just the fact that she was there, meant a lot. But also when we look at this Mariner Uhura conversation, and you think about the animated Mariner, how she sits like that. That's Mariner, the embodiment of Mariner. She's got the big poofy ponytail. She's got her sleeves rolled up. She sits with her legs in a tent and she hugs her knees. That is the physical embodiment of that fictional animated character. And I just think that they did such a fantastic job of casting an actress and who definitely embodies the animated character. And hopefully they use them in this manner some point again. Miss Powell says, my middle, woo, girl, you just said a word. My middle name is Nichelle, after Nichelle Nichols, and my mom didn't even watch Star Trek. There were just so few Black ladies on TV at the time. And just on TV and doing something that could be considered important, not just relegated to being a maid, or you know how we were portrayed back in the. So it was very important. It stood out to your mom, and the gosh, that's a can respect that. She knew greatness, and then look at you. You understood the assignment. You became a Star Trek fan, a knowledgeable Star Trek fan. Now we also got Mariner talking about the Nausicaans, and we remember the Nausicaans playing Domjot basically, and they played Domjot in an episode. What episode? Tapestry with Picard, and that was when Picard got stabbed in the heart by the Nausicaan, and it set him on the path that he was supposed to be on. Well, Mariner had her own interactions on the same Starbase Earhart, with the Nausicaans. So there's our Domjot, and I didn't realize that Domjot was billiards. I mean, I guess I did. I guess I don't know why I thought Domjot was something else. There was Diane Carroll, Nichelle, and someone in Mission Impossible. And yep, I can remember Diane Carroll. I don't even remember who the woman in Mission Impossible was. There, yeah, with me and you could probably do this all day, because I got to figure out the actress who I'm thinking of right now. There was an actress who was on something back in the day, and she ended up becoming a Jehovah's Witness, and she left Hollywood. And I thought that, of course, in hindsight, this is me reading about her uh, as a member of history, and I'm like, gosh, that was like it. I wish she wouldn't have had to leave, but of course, I understand your religious convictions. Excuse me. Um, Another thing that I really liked was Mariner and Boimler kind of saved the day. And they did it in their own little roughshod manner. I'm gonna cough again. That This is the worst it has been in 2 days. I promise I haven't been coughing like this. I should have got tea. I should have got tea. Sorry. But in their own little haphazard manner, they saved the day. And it also let me know that there are more than just the screw ups that we sometimes see on Star Trek Lower Decks. Ms. Powell says, and Desilu Productions produces TOS and Mission Impossible. They were ahead of their time. So, yes, I mean, let's just give them a round of applause because, you know, of course, I love Lucy. Of course, I love Lucille Ball, and and her Desilu Productions was what made a lot of this happen. And matter of fact, made all of this happen. So kudos to Desilu. I love Lucy. We find out that just like uh, Mariner and Boimler and the people from the Cerritos, just like they love and admire all things in the past with the Enterprise crew, the Enterprise crew of Strange New Worlds loves and respects all things in the past from the NX-01 Enterprise. And I thought that was great. They were the fanboys and fangirls of that era. And we rarely get shout outs to the Enterprise crew. We'll hear Archer every now and then, but when you start hearing Travis Mayweather, when you start hearing Hoshi, when you start realizing that we are on Archer's Enterprise, when you start hearing um, those kinds of callbacks to that crew, I think it's a crew that um, needs that love because they were the first rebound Trek, and they tried to do some things differently. They took some big swings, like we've been talking about all of this season for Strange New Worlds, and it didn't hit as well at the time, but I think people are discovering that it was not as bad as they thought it was. Uh, Save for the theme song, and that's arguably because some people love the theme song, but save for the theme song, this show was not as bad as people try to pretend to remember it to be. Um, yeah, Justin agreed. Lucy is a big reason why we have Star Trek today. And Ms. Powell says, I love that they are keeping the thread of Mariner really caring about Starfleet, even though she puts up this tough front. She was paying attention at the Fleet Museum. She asked for the portal assignment. She did, yeah, she put them in the position, number one, to have this experience. But then also, number two, just like Miss Powell said, she was the person who was paying attention. She remembered where that piece that had the heronium from the original NX-01 Enterprise, where it would be on the ship, because we know that she is a far better officer, or she's a far better ensign than she lets on. I'm wondering if, because we're going to see, and I'm gonna try to do either an episode or a short live stream coming up soon, where we talk about some of the screenshots from the trailer of season 4 of Lower Decks, because she's a far better uh, uh, Starfleet member than she lets on, and there are some promotions coming, and I don't remember if she was one of them, but we'll talk about that later. Yes. Uh, Geek Filter says, I'm guessing Lucy saw some first-hand racism with her relationship with Ricky. Hmm. I'm pretty sure she did. Pretty sure she did. Angus, hey there, Angus. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the party. Some people are objectively wrong about that theme song. And look, I don't know which side of the fence that you are sitting on about that theme song, but some people love it. Me, not so much. I didn't, I think that I could probably sit through it a little bit more now. Now that I have an option to skip it, I find myself letting it play. But back when we didn't have no option to skip it, I would get up and do everything but sit and listen to that song. um, Geek Filter said, I think Jonathan Frakes really was happy he could give Enterprise some love, especially after the ending that it got, that he was part of. Yes, that he kind of helped them facilitate undermining that crew. And he even admitted it. And we saw him on the Shuttle Pod show with Connor Trenier and Dominique Keaton. And they talked about it, and he said, after he was just looking at it as a payday, he didn't realize, how that is going to end up historically looking. It looked bad. Justice says Enterprise was good. I remember when it was out, a lot of fans hated it. I liked it. He said he loved the song. I got faith of the heart. I got faith. I got faith. So I think, and now and correct me if I read too much into this. Are they insinuating in this episode that Q and that Trelane was a Q? Excuse me. I could I could be reading too much into it, but I did get that feeling that they were saying that first and foremost, Mariner tells Boimler, don't talk about Q. They haven't met him yet. They said they're kind of still in the Trelane era, or they got this Trelane thing going on. And I'm wondering if they are meant or saying this because Trelane is a Q. Let me see what Geek Filter has for us about the theme song. The theme song was supposed to be something else, but a few weeks before they were going to go to air, Smallville used it, and they felt they had to change it. Or they could have just went with some orchestra music like everybody else. There was a book where Trelane was a Q, but it's never been official canon. I wonder if that's what they were trying to insinuate. Are they like trying to insinuate that we're making it canon now? Geek Filter says in beta canon, they say Trelane is a Q, but they haven't met Trelane yet either. No, it was the original series crew that met Trelane. So Angus says they flat out said it. Squire of Gothos, Trelane was a Q. Now I didn't hear them say it like that, like just flat out mention it, but I wouldn't be shocked if that is something that they want to, go back and kind of sprinkle a retcon over. Uh, there was always that vibe. He and Q were similar, very, very. And if I had to choose, though, even though we only saw Trelane in that one episode, unless you read the books and you were into the beta side of things, I think I'd rather deal with Q anytime, any day of the week, because at least sometimes you got helpful Q. Trelane was just on some real, I just really want to, you guys are dolls to me. And I want to play with you, and you're going to play, and I'm going to make you guys do things that you don't want to do. Ms. Powell says it's similar to Jim Kirk's body was at Daystrom which is a reference to Shatner's The Return. Same thing, like that was a book. So yeah, and they just went ahead and made parts of that book canon. Trelane was like Q's son, yeah, because he was supposed to be kind of childlike. He had to go home and get his ball and go home at the end of the episode. um, Speaking of the end of the episode, we're getting there. Um, they found the heronium. They made the device to fix the time portal, and Boimler and Mariner have to say goodbye to the crew of the Enterprise. Everybody learned quite a bit. Uhura learned a bit about herself. Pike had confirmation about who he was. The whole learning that Una, her statement from ad astra per aspera, which was actually ad astra per aspera, was part of the, or was became the Starfleet motto and was on the poster, and along with a picture of her, uh, let them know that their legacy is cemented. And it was bittersweet moments. Also, Boimler kind of pointing to the fact that Spock had lots of work to do, very important work to do, and that Chapel really wasn't part of that. Um, it lets us know that she's headed for heartache. We know that. We know that from just from knowing what happens during TOS. How we get there is still going to be is yet to be told in Star Trek Strange New Worlds. But the fact that she is now aware that she's not playing any remarkable part in Spock's future is something, it just kind of tore at my heartstrings when you see how deflated she looked. Um, Justice says the Star Trek Encyclopedia back in the day also hinted at it as well. Ms. Powell said, I think that the folks who are writing Trek now definitely read that beta canon. Yeah, and I don't blame them. There are certain things, you can't, of course, you can't incorporate everything from beta, but if it enhances the story, like, and gives it a little bit more uh, substance to the story, then yeah, pull that stuff up out of there, because that the beta canon has a fandom, point blank and period. So why not cater a bit to those people who put in the time, the effort, the love that it takes to not just follow this from the small screen to the big screen, but also to other forms of media. I think that's a good reward for those people who are part, or who have taken part in beta canon. Justice says that's a nice touch, having part of the old Enterprise be part of the ship. They do similar things today in the U.S. Navy and others. They also did it, if I remember correctly, on some of the space shuttles. Yeah, they would use little pieces. So yeah. Miss Powell said that was so sad for Chapel. I wonder if that's why she meets and gets engaged to Corby. And I'm pretty sure that is. And we've already had Corby name dropped, and he, we know he's somebody to that is respected in Starfleet, and that is probably why she got engaged to Corby, because she realized that um, his future, Spock's future, didn't include her. And oh, how sad! How sad! A lot of beta canon is really good, and I have heard nothing but good things. I've not heard anything bad about the beta canon. Oh, Geek Filter says Rock Talk from Prodigy was a species that was only in books until Prodigy. Good. Bring those characters out. Use those life forms that we have not heard anything about. Flesh out some of this other stuff because that keeps things fresh to me. Um, while it may be something that the readers and the consumers of the graphic novels, comics, and the books they might be familiar with, um, we can still, without continuously going back to the nostalgia well of what we've seen on screen of Star Trek, there is so much more that they can dig from and tell fresh stories. So I like that idea. You say correct, Tasha. NASA did that also. Yeah, I thought so. I was listening to some podcast the other night. As a matter of fact, it was they were talking about the oh gosh, space shuttle, the one that exploded. They had the teacher on it. Remind me of which one was that? Was it the Columbia? Um, and I can remember that day vividly. I can remember what class I was in when we were pulled out to all watch the space shuttle launch, and the shocked silence that went across the room when that shuttle blew up. Um, so yeah, I remember that. Like, yeah. So I was listening to a podcast about that, and that's why it's so fresh on my mind. Miss Powell said, and Chapel is studying in this season what Corby specializes in. She sure was. That was she was studying the three laws, Corby's three laws of something or the other. I can't remember. um, even some of the Star Trek Online canon is good too. I've said that as well. They need to incorporate some of that. You know, I was that was some of my big reaches for Star Trek Picard, was reaching into that Star Trek Online stuff. It didn't come to pass, but I think that I had some good ideas. Challenger, it was Challenger. It was not Columbia. Challenger. Yes, I remember that. Can remember seventh grade, um, and I was in I was in English class, but our English class and one of the science classes kind of got together in the science lab to watch on TV live this space shuttle uh, going and being launched with the first teacher aboard. So it was very important for my teachers for us to see this, and then they were also trying to encourage us to get into STEM without saying this, but you give the kids something to be interested in and then tie it into education, and that was what they were doing. But now you got to explain to some 12 and 13-year-old kids what the hell just happened to this shuttle. So anywho, yeah. Um, Ms. Powell said Picard was heavily using Star Trek Online. I don't play games, but it's nice to see folks' devotion rewarded. Yes, absolutely, and that's the same thing I feel about Beta Canon and the people who have given their time and their effort and their love to Star Trek Online. Welcome back, Win Grace. Picard did use a lot of online stuff. Uh, Geek Filter said shuttle launches were still a big deal back then, and the teacher on board just ratcheted that interest up, and it really did. Like you said, those were stop your class moments anyway. But when you start teaming up, we had it. I went to a public school in Gary, Indiana. It had to be 50 to 60 kids in this classroom together watching this little small TV to see this teacher go up into space. It ratcheted up the interest. And I can remember looking at the teachers' faces and them going out into the hallway and then coming back in with are there any questions about what we just saw? So yeah, I can remember it. Um, Angus says Challenger was not a science lesson, but a harsh engineering lesson. And it was more or less listen to your freaking engineers. You're paying these people for a reason. They warned you that the wear and tear on the ships coming and leaving, coming back and leaving, going into the atmosphere or out of the atmosphere, all of that was putting wear that couldn't be bandaged with them coming back and trying, okay, let's replace some parts. That known that this shuttle had done enough missions, and they listened and they did nothing. They did nothing with the information that they got. So you can't act surprised when you pay people and their entire job is to do this thing, and they have done this thing, the thing that they're being paid for, and you don't respect what they've said as far as what their prognosis was for this whole mission. It just, as an adult, and listening to what we witnessed all over again with an adult mindset, it pisses me off that those people lost their lives and they did not have to. But that's going into a whole different tangent. Justin said, I was very young, but we watched that happen also. I still remember Reagan being on talking to the nation. And I can just remember that it never stopped. Now, we weren't in the 24-hour news cycle, so news eventually goes off. But that is literally what they were talking about on the 5 o'clock news, on the 6 o'clock news, on the 7 o'clock news, on the 10 o'clock news. They were talking about the and I didn't want to see it again. And that would have been very shortly after I lost my mother. So that is one thing. But so it's like I did not want to see a person and know that those people, when they got on there and they were waving and all happy and they got on that ship, and that would be the last thing they did. Wow. Too young for Challenger, but you remember Columbia. I was getting those two mixed up, showing my true to life age, how I forget stuff. Okay, so we go back to the Cerritos. Number one, we find out that Boimler, Pike, and the Orions make a deal that they can say they found that portal and that it was found by Orion scientists. And that made Tendi and her aspirations possible. Even though, there might have been some embellishing here and there, but that made her have a dream to go out into space and to not do it as a pirate. And I thought that was nice. I also thought that it was nice that Ransom was so enamored by Una. Says she's the hottest first officer ever, and it just so happens that Jerry McConnell and Rebecca Romaine are the actors who bring those characters to life, and that they are truly married. So of course he thinks she's the hottest thing in Starfleet. Yeah, I kind of wish we would have seen Tendy's grandmother, great grandmother, whoever she was, as one of the henchwomen. Yeah, it would have been nice to bring her into it. And I'm wondering why they didn't, but at the same time, it didn't matter. We got the point, but I would have liked to have seen that too. Justice says, yes, the O-ring failed on Challenger. Columbia was the tiles on the underside were damaged from the launch. Just a shame. Just, yeah, just, oh, Geek Filter said, I heard someone saying how inappropriate that he said that, and they were kind of piled on because, they are married. Yes, if anybody can say it, he can say it. I think that is, oh, I forgot the last scene of when they cartooned the Strange New Worlds Enterprise crew. That was perfect. They drunk this Orion martini or cocktail or whatever it was, and they became 2D characters. Perfect, perfect, chef's kiss. I hope that we see another crossover event. Doesn't have to be Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks, but it can definitely be Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks. I truly loved what they did with this episode. And of course, I have to rate it. And I can't give this anything less than a 5. It was beautifully done, well executed, truly a love letter to classic Trek, and given in the voice of the newer Trek. Perfectly done. Loved it. Miss Powell said, Ransom is always appropriate, isn't he? And I guess, this is from people who are used to criticizing Lower Decks. And I guess, many of us kind of facilitate them being able to do that. I know many of you guys really love Lower Decks, but it was, so much of the first 3 seasons was hit or miss for me. The first season didn't hit very well for me. There was more that I liked about the second season, and even more that I liked about the third season. I think the third season is where, for me, it starts to find its stride. And I don't know if it's because I have become accustomed to these characters and am growing a bit fond of them, or if the writing is getting a little more smart for me. So we still have the crazy references, Easter eggs that you're looking for as you're watching Star Trek Lower Decks, but it's also the stories are getting smarter. That Way Douche, was that season 2? That to me was like one of my favorite episodes of Lower Decks. I thought they did an outstanding job with it, and I was hoping to see more like that. And I think we got more like that. Speaking of this, given any choice in 2, something I'm missing. Angus just said, Mbanga. Yes, Mbanga. This goes up there with trials and tribulations. Yes, it's right up there with it. It is. Excuse me. It definitely is. Pike and his expressions. Haha. Yes, 5 out of 5. Great crossover and episode. But Mariner doesn't know what a pinup poster. Yeah, because pinup means something entirely different. And Una's probably thinking to herself, what turn of fate did I have that I became a pinup model? When Grace liked season 2 best so far of the Lower Deck seasons, right? So when Grace is asking, given a choice of any Trek, what would you like to see animated? You can go ahead on and give me DS9. Yeah, I'd like to see DS9. Oh, you said you retraced the bad messages, but guess you can still see it. Yeah, you erased the bad messages. I'm guessing that's what you meant. Lord have mercy. Geek Filter said it was kind of nice that she didn't actually understand every reference, because it always feel like people in Starfleet know all of our random slang and phrases. That's another thing. I really liked that they didn't know um, the proper terms because, yeah, language evolves over a period of time. And what it had been 100 and some odd years between uh, present day for Lower Decks and present day for A Strange New Worlds. So there should be some differences in language. So when they said Worf's honor, yeah, they knew that they shouldn't have said it after they said it. After you said Worf's honor and then said, oh, I should have said that. But that could just be one of those obscure references that the Strange New Worlds cast wasn't going to get anyway because linguistics, just don't let Uhura study those changes in your language too long because then she would start to understand that these are things I'm not supposed to know. And Miss Powell is agreeing with Geek Filter. DS9 as an anime, that would be interesting. Yes. TNG and DS9 for who you would like to see animated. And when Grace said, no animated Pelia, makes me wonder if she was a super late addition to the season. That's an interesting thought too. Miss Powell said TNG could do a Babylon 5 DVD animated movie post Nemesis or see Riker as captain of the Titan. That would be good too. We saw him a little bit in Lower Decks. Yeah, go ahead on and make a movie about that. I'll watch it. I will watch it. So that is all that I have for the Star Trek Lower Decks, Star Trek Strange New World crossover event, those old scientists. And yes, I'll take more of that much of it as I can get. Justin is agreeing with Miss Powell about that Riker is captain of the Titan or a TNG animated movie post Nemesis. Geek Filter said, I think she's classified as a special guest, so she isn't part of the main cast. And when Grace says, Titan under Riker would be a perfect bridging the gap series. I agree. I think that would be that would be something that they need to look into. Yeah. Bridge the gap. We need to figure out what happened between here and here. I'd be down for it. So I don't have anything else, y'all. It has been fun as always. Thank you. I really and truly love that we had some faces in the place that hadn't been here with some regularity. This episode, brought us all out. I'm glad to see you, Miss Powell. Glad to see you as always, Geek Filter. Angus, you're here and you're there and you're here. But I was glad that you were here with us live today. We had fun. Let's see. Miss Powell said, bring the Titan Beta Cannon with Christine Vale, etc. And also, she says, unlike Babylon 5, all of the TNG cast are still here and in good voice. And they still want work because that is one thing Picard, Patrick Stewart, was saying. He wants to do a movie. So, if you were available to do a movie, you can certainly voice your character in animated form. And all of them have done voiceover work on Gargoyles. And there was another one that had a lot of Star Trek actors. Oh, what was it? It's going to burn me up that I cannot think of what animated feature that was that had so many Star Trek actors. And I was like, good Lord, is this written by the same It's written by the same people. If somebody thinks about it, I know you'll put it in the comments or the chat. Please do that. You said the Aventine animated would be great too. Give Esri more love. Yeah, she, one of my favorite characters was Jadzia, so I wasn't so keen on her being replaced. I didn't give Esri a hard time because she was the person replacing. I just didn't like it. Their voices, they voiced the video games as well, says Angus. Justice says he would do it. He did American Dad and Family Guy a lot. He enjoys that stuff. Yes. There was Family Guy, but that was supposed to be them. Yeah, they were playing themselves. I can't remember what it was, but when I remember, I'm going to put it up on my face on YouTube in the community tab or somewhere where you guys will find it. With all that, y'all, it's been a pleasure. I'm going to see you Sunday when we come back here to talk about the Cloaks of War. That is episode 8. And Lord, we're going to lead that right into that doggone musical episode. But I'm looking forward to getting past the Cloak of War because I'm excited, oddly, for that musical episode and also for the finale, Hegemony. They've made TNG characters as Lower Decks characters in the Lower Decks mobile game. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here, y'all. I'm going to see you guys on Sunday. Live long and prosper. Peace.